All right, guys, Brian with VetteSource back here, where we're taking a closer look at our orphan abandoned street find Corvette that was kind of dumped on me here unceremoniously, even though sometimes I don't want these. When people find out you take in orphans, they insist on you having them, whether you want them or not sometimes. So that's just the nature of the end of the business I'm in. But basically this morning we talked about real quick whether or not we could save this car. Now, of course, pardon me while I do this, this gentleman presented this car to me as kind of a parts car, but let's go over it real quick and I'll tell you my thoughts generally. So you know that if you've watched me in the past, you've been around me, or you've seen some of my, oh, that's nice silicone, my videos in the past, I'm always advocating for saving a car if it's A, intrinsically something you want, or B, somewhat economically feasible. It doesn't have to be entirely justified, because let's face it, a lot of what we do here is simply just to have something to do. It's like building a jigsaw puzzle almost. So this car itself, it's kind of an interesting dilemma, right? Obviously something happened to it. Now let's back up here. It's a 1980 Corvette. It is the last of the full year of Corvettes produced in the St. Louis dungeon of a factory they had there, and this was produced, I think, April of 1981. It's showing 109,000 miles on it right now, which is probably correct. It's a black car. Like I said, produced April of 1980. 192 19L paint, 192 trim, black leather. So it's actually got a lot of cool things about it. 1980 was also the last year you could buy a Corvette that did not have computer control carburetor. So this is the last year of a non-computer integrated Corvette, which is cool because you can do a heck of a lot of stuff with a car like this. This car actually came fairly well optioned. We've got glass T-tops, which are not damaged or cracked, amazingly. We've got aluminum rims. Tilt telly by that point was pretty much standard, so that's not really an option, but it's here. We've got power windows. We have power door locks on this one. We have air conditioning, although I think air conditioning was still an option in 80, I think. Power steering, power brakes was there. Cruise control, which I know is an option. Leather interior. So it's actually fairly well optioned, and a black on black 1980 is a good looking car. I think this is broken. It won't let me go back through here, but not a bad car. So, you know, starting at the top, you get a car like this, okay? And I know a lot of people are looking for cars like this. They're searching for something they can make their own, and I think that's part of the fun of the hobby, is being able to find a project that you're going to be able to do and complete. The problem I get, and I see a lot of times in this end of the business, the salvage end, is how many cars are bought with the best of intentions, and then unfortunately they are left to languish because A, they thought this was just an old Chevrolet that they could whip back together again, and B, they figured it wouldn't be that expensive. The problem you run into is simply because of demand of the widgets as far as available parts are less with a Corvette, because these were not made as frequently as other cars and as great as numbers. So you don't get the same ability to find parts like you would others. There are lists of them out there. Now, one other thing I will tell you right now, the way to determine, before I forget this, an 80 from an 81, this trim on an 80 is not painted black. On an 81, it is painted black. So that's the one way to tell an 80 through 81, or 80 to 81 differently. So that way you don't have to worry about it, because physically they look the same. So 80 through 82 have what we call the disco bumpers on them, or we refer to them as the disco bumpers. And it really honestly is a good looking facelift. And I think that's why now it drives a lot of the desire for these, simply because it's a rather unique look. And personally, I'm kind of a drag racing fan as my side hobby, and I love to see these when they're made in drag cars. They're really quite cool. Now this one here, you know, starting off, if you were going to attack this as a project, okay, if you had broken T-tops to start with, on glass T-tops, you're already in the hole because these are expensive. But if we look at this car overall, right, we've got bad weather stripping, right? Bad weather stripping, bad seals everywhere, okay? Which again, can get expensive if you don't know where you're going to. You've got a wavy rear bumper. This one's actually a lot worse than what I've seen. I'd be willing to bet that this has been sitting, or was sitting on the street for quite a while. Not months, probably years. We've still got, latches are still in place. Everything's there. Our interior's pretty rough. I mean, this is not gonna work. This is cracked. This is another $500 piece if you can find it. These are $1,000, like I said. The rest of the gauges honestly look fairly decent. This also has a rear window defroster, which is nice. The seats are not horrible. In fact, it's funny, it's got manual seats, which is a plus because the electric seats are a pain in the butt to get. Body wise, we're looking at misfitting, ill-fitting bumpers, and of course problems here. Looks like they probably scraped this into something. I've also noticed broken headlight brackets here. We've got damage here to the fiberglass, but this also brings us to the one big point that I'll show you in a second. But the one thing this car has, which is really cool, is this thing has really good bones. The frame is exceptional on this car for a car that's been sitting outside for quite a while. I mean, other than the flash corrosion that we get on our stuff down here, which does not ever progress further than this for you guys up north. This is just the way it stays. This car is clean. This car is pretty neat. It's a good candidate for a lot of different things you could make out of it. It presents well because you can do a lot with this, and there's really nothing missing on this car. Everything is still here, everything's still intact. In fact, usually a lot of times the impact bars are so complex on these 83, 82s, a lot of that's missing, but it's still here. Now the one big hickey on this car is somebody fudged it. This car was obviously hit at one point in time, and they attempted to rebond. This is a new front clip. In fact, I'd be willing to bet that's when they painted it this deep purple color. But you can see here these rivets that they so interestingly tried to put in and splice it right here. You can see this clear resin. This is not factory. It's not the way this is supposed to be. And you can see it on the other side. They actually just used straight up Bondo on that side. And then they made this ill-fated attempt to mold this into the corner here, which is absolutely not correct. But again, these things can be addressed. But the front clips got to come off of it for sure. This is what throws people off, and this is what makes this more of a challenging build. Now see here, it's not even tight in this corner, and straight up down here they did not even bond the inner fender. Well, they tried to put some sheet metal screws in there, the inner fender to the outer fender, because all this is glued together. But overall, I do like what I see in this car. Now I will tell you, most Corvettes, when they get to this age, they are abandoned for very specific reasons. Because let's just be straight up, for younger guy, younger gal, they get their hands on the Corvette like this and it runs, they're going to drive it. They're going to go anywhere they can with it. And the thing about these is people often have a romanticized version of what a Corvette is in their mind. Corvette's a great car. It's a cool looking car. It's neat. It's fun. It's got a lot of neat features about it. But for one, it's not perfect. For two, it's a complex build. And for three, the way it's built can be extremely aggravating to have to figure out. So with that being said, this car, in my mind, obviously was abandoned for a very specific reason. Now I'll show you why here in just a second. I was just looking as I'm walking back here. Our ignition works okay. So anyway, let me show you. So most of the time, you know, you'll get guys, and this is kind of a public service broadcast, oh yeah, there's only a few things wrong with it, just do this and do this. Well, the one trick a lot of people will do is they'll put fresh oil in a motor, right? Oh, it's got clean oil, that's good, right? But if you look at this one carefully, what you'll see missing is the fan blade, which is in the back seat over there. And you'll also notice that all the spark plug wires are removed, and there are no spark plugs in this thing. So obviously the first thing that told me was the motor was locked up, because they were trying to get the motor to turn over. Sure enough, we put the breaker bar on it and the motor will not turn. Now, honestly guys, that doesn't really concern me like it would some people, because there's only about 100 million small block Chevys out there, or anything you wanted to put in this. Cool thing about this, you can put a big block in this one if you wanted to, because there's no computer controls and everything will fit, as long as it's not a tall deck block. But for somebody just starting out, this may not be the best project for them, okay? This may be a project that you take on as your second or third project, or you allocate the amount of money that this will take, because truthfully, it's gonna need body work, it's gonna need paint, it's going to need engine work, and I would assume transmission, because we know it's been sitting for a while. The interior's fairly, well, you know what's funny is the door panels and the seats in this car are good. It's just simply the dash that is so trashed on this car. And of course the steering wheel. So there's a lot of considerations here that you'll want to take into account, you know, before you buy and throw into a Corvette project. And that's not even just the C3s, guys, okay? This is, you know, C4s, even a C5. C5s can become electrical nightmares for people, simply because there's so many modules that run these cars, and they're starting to get a little bit older. So you want to be careful, and I only say this as just a pragmatic kind of viewpoint on this, right? I don't ever tell people this to discourage them. In fact, I would love to see every one of the projects put back together again. I can't even begin to tell you how many cars that I've sold parts to a customer for years and years and years. They've been faithfully working on it, and then they quit. They stop. They just don't want to do it anymore because they run out of money, or their expectations were different. And then I end up having to buy their entire car and part the whole thing out because they never finished it. They never got around to it. And it's not a condemnation of anybody. It's simply the way life works sometimes. And even when you see guys working slower on cars, there could be life considerations, financial considerations. But the truth is, you're still having fun doing something. But as I look around in the exterior as I'm talking, I still see lots of good stuff in here. These panels are good. The sunshade's good. The back package tray's good. This one's got a little bit of crack right here, but man, I tell you what, I am gonna go ahead and keep this car together, even though financially this car is worth much more to me in parts than it is as a whole car. Those T-tops, that steering column, those seats, man, those seats especially, because they're manual seats, they're not electric, which is better in the long run. The wheels, the rims, seats, T-tops, and steering column, that's worth more than I even have invested in this car. But it's just solid enough car that I will go ahead and offer this up for sale. I really don't want to hold on to it, simply because I have so many other things on my plate. If you've watched me, I have lots of stuff that I don't even really talk about regularly on the channel, just because this is what the business I'm in. Yeah, you can actually see here how bad that gap is on this door. This is way far off. This is not even close to what it's supposed to be. So if you have an interest and you've watched all the way to the end, let me know. My email address and my phone number will be in the description of this video, just so people can get in touch with me. And if nobody buys it, fine, I'll put it in the back of the warehouse, and eventually one day you'll see me tear into this, probably here on the channel. I'll take care of it. I'll start messing with it. Heck, again, my thing would be to throw a big block in here, like a nasty 468, something massive in this, with a turbo 400 behind it. The good thing too about these 8382s, one thing I forgot to mention, was oh, look at how nice even the body mounts on this thing are. They're not, well, they're not perfect, but the cages are really nice on this. Anyway, the 8382s actually have a Dana 44 out back. It's got a really wimpy 259 or 287 gear in it, but man, you can bump those up. I still think Yukon gear makes a gear set for these, and you can rock all the way to a 456, I think, with that 8.5-inch ring gear. I think, I don't remember for sure, but if I were going to do this car, to me, my point would be, oh, we got a rotten radiator support, which is like all of them. I can see it down there. My viewpoint would be big block, turbo 400, very steep gear in the back, probably a 373 410, and put some really nice biggest drag slicks I could put on it, DOT radials, and I'd run this thing at Baytown every weekend, probably just for fun. Not even a cage or anything, just go run it in a modified, not even modified, just a street class, and see what I do with it, you know, because it's got the looks. That's gonna wrap things up. I'm actually losing my daylight already out here, and I've been talking long enough, but let me know what you think. Would you take on a project like this? What would you do with it, right? A lot of guys have different ideas about drivetrains they do to it, you know, how they'd make it look. Tell me what your thoughts are. I'm just curious what everybody's nowadays thinking about these, because this is the last generation of a non-computerized Corvette that you can actually modify. And I think, unless you live in California or New York, you can pretty much modify this to your heart's content, and nobody's going to say anything the better, because it's already a 42-year-old car. So I'll wrap it up tonight, and I'll be back with you guys later this week for some more good stuff. Talk to you then.